Good evening. I'd like to call into session tonight's meeting of the Kennebunk Planning Board. Today is Monday, March 23rd, 2015. Our next item on the agenda is to approve minutes of the previous meeting, and we'll put that off to the end of the meeting. The next item is a sketch plan application of Coke Corner by Patricia and Gary Cook. Sorry. Thank you. Judy, do you want to tell us about this?
Sure. This property is located at 149 Port Road. This is the former bookstore that the Cooks built and opened up several years ago. And unfortunately, to my dismay, the bookstore is closed. And they're proposing to take that building where the bookstore was and convert it, the upstairs, to apartments with some shared space downstairs. And there is also a pad site on the back of the site that was never built. The building was never built, but it was approved when it went through site plan review for commercial uses. The parking out there has all been built, and so what is being proposed now is are 4 apartments. Originally, there was also consideration of maybe getting an apartment approved for the pad site as well, maybe upstairs in whatever building gets built there. And I'll let Brian Bodette explain where this is right now in terms of whether they're proposing 4 apartments or 5 apartments, but the site, because it was approved for commercial, should easily be able to handle the parking requirements because they had to meet commercial parking under the prior plan approval. It's going through planning board, obviously, because it now kicks into being a subdivision under state subdivision law because there are 3 or more residential uses on the lot that are proposed. So that's why they have to go through subdivision plan review. I guess I'll let Brian do a presentation, and if you have some questions, we can go over it. The board will also need to decide whether you want to do a site walk out there just to take a look at it and help them shovel all the snow out of the back of the site.
Great.
I'm Brian Bodette. I'm an architect here in Kennebunk. I actually did the design for the original Kennebunks. And the Cooks are still the existing owners, and they would like to convert it, as Judy said, they'd like to convert it into 4 residential units in the main building. And I'll go over what's existing, what's proposed. I'll just kind of walk you through what the plan is pretty quickly here. This first sheet shows the existing, I'm going to call it the first floor and the second floor. If any of you have been out to the Kennebunks building, there's also a garden level, what was supposed to be a bakery, which turned into the Kennebunk High School Rams store. So that's a commercial use, and the idea is that we're going to keep it as a commercial use. So it's probably, hopefully, going to become sort of an incubator business space where there's a common. Here, let me switch to that. Yeah, where there's a common receptionist and maybe 3 or 4 professionals that maybe have separate cubicles or whatever, but it would be sort of a shared business space. None of the walls would be changing down there, so really this lower garden level is staying exactly as is. And then the next floor above that is the first floor. And that's the current layout. That's, when you walk in, that was the first floor of the bookstore. and then you would go up the stairs, and this is the second floor of the existing bookstore. And I'm going to walk you through what we're going to be doing as far as the apartments go. Okay, this shows the. Let me just make sure. Yep. The floor plan on the lower left is what I just showed you. That's the existing first floor of the Kennebunk bookstore. And this up here on the upper right is that same floor plan, so the first floor, but as apartments. So this first floor would have, up in the corner here, I'm going to see if I can move this over. Right now, this would become Unit A, so it would be a one-bedroom unit with access to it from the back parking lot. If you're familiar with the building, there was a new stair, a new egress stair that was added, and that's where you would access this corner unit. The middle unit would be the handicap accessible unit, which you could either access from that back parking area, or you could actually go up into the handicap parking that's there right now, and there's a handicap ramp that would get in. And we're required to have 5% of the units being handicap, which, out of 4, that requires us to do 1. And then this unit here, which is sort of the front of the building, is actually going to be a 2-story unit. And I've got the square footages. If you need those, I've got them on this drawing. And so I'm going to start with this one. This is the first floor. I'm going to shoot up to the second floor, which is a 2-unit. So you would come into this space using the handicap ramp or the steps that's there now, walk into the unit. It would have its own entrance. Okay, so again, this is the existing second floor. This is the proposed second floor. This is the second floor of Unit C. So the one that I showed you, you walk in on its own. You'd go up the stairs, and there'd be 2 bedrooms up there. So this is the largest unit. And then the Unit 2A would be above 1A, and again, the access for that one would be through the back stair that would lead to the parking area. And that's pretty much the layout. It's, basically, again, it's 4 units. So why don't we just maybe start with some questions if the board has any?
Sure, Alexander.
I had a question to start. On the application form for your lot size, it says total acreage .93.
Mm-hmm.
Then on the actual plan that was submitted, it says lot size is .95.
I would go with the survey. I might have just read that wrong when I was filling out the
And then
application.
on the tax map, it says 1.02, so.
I would go with the survey, because
Yeah, I would go
Leon
with the
Blood did
survey.
the survey.
So
and,
I just saw that was
Yep.
inconsistent.
Oh, thank you.
And then I had one more question. There's going to be 4 units?
Mhm.
And I have a question on the zoning on the lot size. Is it 10,000 square feet for each
Dwelling.
dwelling? So you're just making it with 40,000, a little over, or just about an acre?
Right, a little less than an acre, right.
Yeah,
Yep.
so 4 units of 40,000 square feet that are needed
Yeah,
for
and
it?
it's 5,280.
So then my
I mean,
question would be if there's a 5th,
No, there wouldn't be a 5th one. There would be 4,
They're not proposing 5 at this point.
yeah.
okay.
They were, and they've changed their
Yep.
mind. or-
So you're still
thought
not
we-
thinking of adding commercial, something on that pad?
Oh, no, that would be a Phase 2, yes.
Would there be enough acreage on the lot for more,
For a 5th dwelling, you mean?
or even if it's, I thought in this zoning that whether it's commercial or if it's a mixed use, it still needed to be 10,000 feet,
Well, not in addition.
square feet.
But we can double check that.
Okay.
Okay, that was just my question. Thank you.
I thought from the acreage that I had looked up, you had plenty of lot area for that.
So you look that up
For the number.
for the
Well,
next meeting,
We
yeah.
can double check that.
Okay,
Make sure of the lot area. And I would go with the survey, not with our tax map
Right, yeah.
calculation.
Thanks. David, do you have any questions at this point?
Have you given any thought to what the pad would look like and what would be happening in terms of architecture for that?
Not at all. No. Just, we're not even sure of the use of it at this point. This is just, they know they want to convert these into something that's useful, needed for the downtown. They sort of started with the town as to what was needed there, and the feedback that they got from a number of people was that it would be that the residential component, would be probably the most needed down there right now, while keeping the commercial in the garden level.
Okay, so really, this is really residential over business, if you wanted to think of it that way.
Yep.
Any thoughts about, are these going to be apartments rented?
Yes. Not condos. They're going to be
Not
apartments.
condos.
Right. So the Cooks are going to maintain ownership of the whole property.
Okay. On the first floor, you're going to end up having 1A, the first floor of the two-floor unit, and then what, one more first floor unit?
Yeah, exactly. There'll be one on the left side.
Which is handicapped accessible?
No, the middle one's handicap.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because that one has the access. Well, I mean, the left one could be as well because it has a ramp, but we chose, it had a little more footprint in order to get a larger bathroom in the middle one because we needed the handicap bathroom.
You do. So basically 3 living spaces on the first floor, and then,
Well, the two, 1A and 1, I'm sorry. 1A and 1B would be a single floor apartment, each of them. And then, so those are just 1-bedroom units
right,
on the first floor. And then 1C just has the living space downstairs, and that has a second floor where the bedrooms are.
right. So
Yep.
that gives you 3 units right there, right?
Yep. And then
Okay,
the fourth
what's-
one is over this.
Okay.
The fourth one is over 1A, which is 2A. And that's the barn on the left. I don't know if you're familiar with Kennebunks. That's what those units are.
Okay.
And it's actually already a sort of a unit, a living unit. It was her office.
So that's going to have the same, since it's the barn configuration, it's going to have the same, not configuration, but the same boundaries, if you will, that the downstairs unit has. It'll be built
Right.
right over it.
Yep, exactly.
It looks like whatever 2A is on the second floor, is that the one that's, right, okay, there's 2A, and then 1C has an upstairs right there, correct? But it's going to spill
Correct.
into part of what 1B is that the case?
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's correct. I don't know if you're familiar with that conference room up there, that really nice room that they had for meetings. That is being absorbed by the 2-story unit. Because the idea is that they might actually live in that one in the future.
okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, okay, yeah. All right, I'm set with what the footprint looks like, or, what it is, thanks.
Richard?
Since you will now have a lot more parking than you need, have you thought about getting rid of some of the parking and turn it back to green space?
Probably not. I mean, I know parking's
Or renting it.
I was going to say, I know
Exactly.
parking is
If they were open to it, some of the employees in Lower Village could use it for parking.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure it would go to good use, however. I don't
All
think
right, so
they'll
the
just
answer
leave them
to my
blank.
question was no.
What was that?
The answer to my question was no.
Yeah, I'd say no.
Okay. That's the only question I have.
Okay.
I don't have any questions myself at the moment. So, trying to read what is over this plan sheet number 2. It says refer to architectural plan about proposed deck layout. Is there something you're doing different to the deck? I don't.
Could I actually take a peek at what you're looking at?
Yeah, sure. This note.
Yeah, that plan was from the original construction of Kennebunks. Yeah, and that's that new deck that's there now.
Tweak that note, too.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was kind of hard to figure out what was happening with what you submitted. So thank you for going through it. Like
Sure.
This. All right, Judy. So
Well, your normal process for subdivision is to do a site walk out there. In this case, I don't know, I mean, a lot of you probably been out there and seen most of the site, but if you want to schedule a site walk, it probably wouldn't take too long, and might be worth it just to walk around and see what the situation is in terms of maybe buffers to abutting there's only one residence that abuts this on the side. I don't know if it's something the board is going to want to consider in terms of added buffering as part of this. One of the things I needed to check on this one, because for multifamily, normally you need to create a 50-foot buffer around the perimeter of the site. For an existing use that is converting an existing building to multifamily, that buffer requirement is waived, but there's supposed to at least be some effort made to landscape and buffer the project from abutting uses, so. Maybe something you want to just look at so that when you do your final review and findings on this, you have a better feel for what's out there and whether it's something you feel needs to be addressed by the applicant.
okay.
Can Brian tell us what buffering is out there now?
I really don't remember. I mean, this project started, in the wintertime, so I really can't remember. But, obviously there's going to be some landscaping with this new project, and, I'm sure the Cooks would welcome having a landscape buffer between their building and the residents next door. Not so sure there's a whole lot of room to buffer between the parking lot and, what is the Kennebunk Port hardware building. It's there's just there's not much room back there.
Actually, it looks like the parking is right up to the property
Yeah,
line.
exactly. And then in the back where the park is, I don't know how much of a need there is to buffer that. So it's really just that little piece of land, I think, between the Willis, I think his name is.
Yep.
Wilson, that's what it is. Yeah.
But you don't know what landscaping is there between there now. I mean, wouldn't the site review board have required buffering between a retail establishment and a residence?
To a certain extent, although there had been a residence there that got converted when the bookstore went in. I'm sorry, there was a pizza place that was there and before the pizza place went in, there was a residence that was converted to the pizza place. So it's kind of had use right up to that side lot line for years. So every time it got changed, pretty much the footprint stayed in the same location on the site. So,
Judy, are we going to?
I think the site review board probably had some landscaping, and I'm not sure this particular plan shows the landscaping that was approved as part of the project.
Brian, you haven't submitted a landscaping plan.
Not yet, no.
So, okay. Are we gonna need a public hearing?
You will, yes.
On
This
this
will
at
need
some
to go
point?
through the
Okay.
normal subdivision review process.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, please, David.
The only other thing I'd be concerned about is if there's going to be any changes to the lighting. This is going from a commercial use where presumably we would want to have lights extinguished after business hours type of situation, and whether there's going to be a change. And if there are lights that are no longer needed for the back portion of the parking lot, if those do exist, perhaps those can be extinguished. I don't mean taken out, but, you know.
No, right. I think that's a good point, and I'm sure they'd be welcome to that. Yeah.
Okay. So that would probably be what we want to see on a sidewalk.
And also the potential pad site, where that is located, we'd want to see that. And
Now, they've
Well,
been,
that's
they've
pretty
been
identif-
plowing the parking. Is it
Yes.
pretty obvious where that pad
It
site
is. It's very obvious because the parking spaces were created around where that pad is going to be.
but the pad itself isn't cleared. It's got snow on it. There's been no work done on. There's no site work has been done on that pad site, as it were. There's no.
Nope, correct. They've just basically left it as
Left it,
lawn.
right.
Yeah.
Is there any kind of plan that they had for what that building would look like in relation to the other one?
Nope,
No?
none at all. Yeah, because again, they're not even sure of the use at this point, so it was a little futile to go down that road when we don't even know how far down the road it's going to be. This is their priority, is to just get these 4 units in the building.
So it's an approved pad site,
Yes.
and they're not proposing any changes to it right now. So I'm just trying to identify what role we have in reviewing it again. So it doesn't seem like we have much to say toward that.
They're not
So-
proposing any change to that part of the site.
Okay.
Okay?
So then we should just
Obviously,
be
the
focused.
parking requirement for commercial was more than for
Right.
residential, so
Yep.
they don't really need to find additional parking spaces out there, so.
So our review will be focused on whether or not the residential uses meet the standards of our subdivision.
Subdivision, yep.
And the applicant knows if they're going to do anything on that pad site, they'll need to go back through review. Probably, I don't know whose review, our review or site plan. At this point, it's now subdivision.
At this point, it's now
So it'll come back to us.
subdivision. Yes, yeah. Because this plan, unlike subdivision review, site plans don't get filed at the registry. Subdivision plans will need to get filed at the registry of deeds, so any change to that would have to come
Come
back.
back, right, okay. Just so the applicant's aware of that. All right, so if we're just focused on the building, we don't really need, do we need,
It's up to you.
how much do we need to see of the ground, I guess is the question. I know we need to know about vegetation, but
And lighting, I think we need to know.
again, is that?
Lighting, I'd like to know.
Is that snow dependent, or, I guess that's my question, do we need to wait till snow is
No,
gone
I
to
don't.
do a site walk for this?
This one's going to be easy to walk.
It seems like it, I just want to get a sense of the board. What do you think, Dick?
I think we should probably take a quick look at it.
Yeah.
And it's all, the back is plowed out and everything, so we can see where the lot lines are and that kind of thing.
Well, I don't know if you can see the lot lines, but the
Parking lot.
parking is paved.
Okay, but you'll be able to show us where the property ends and begins and all that?
I'd probably have to have somebody like a surveyor or Bob Metcalf or somebody who represents the site of this project. I don't represent the site, just the building.
Well, you could have some flags out there, couldn't you? At the
Yeah, I mean, I'd
corners,
have
for
to
example.
find somebody to do that, right?
Because all the buildings and parking are there, really, the only flagging requirement that probably may not be as visible as are the corner pins for the
Right.
property locations.
Yeah, but I think, it's a pretty flat site, and I think, the parking was done according to the plan, so I think once you get down there, the reference points will be there, that I think you'll be able to extrapolate roughly where that, where the property lines are. And you'll see there's, on one side, the hardware building sort of establishes that side, and, the park in the back, just, it's pretty obvious when you get out there.
I think probably our main concern is the border with the Wilson property and how
That's pretty
gonna-
identifiable too, because on the site plan, you'll see where the building sits in relationship to the property line, and it's, you can really see clearly where that is and how much room there is, and none of that's changing either. So if you get the sense that there should be more buffering there, I think it'll be pretty obvious when you get there.
We just want to make sure we know how much room we have, if you will, or how much room's available between the boundary between Willis Wilson and this property.
Right.
And how much you can amplify the existing buffer, how much space
Right.
there is.
Mm-hmm.
So are we gonna want that delineated, or are you guys comfortable with? Do we need them to have a surveyor go flag that? Is the question. Which is what?
I think as long as Brian can show us the approximate place, I mean, nothing's up against
No,
lot
I can
lines.
easily, I can
this was
easily show
a
you.
pre-existing building that's been there for years,
Right.
and Willie Wilson's has been there for years, and
Right.
We're not going to change any of that, and so we'd just like to get a feel for the flavor. I mean, my assumption is that since this is going to a far less onerous use than what was there before, either the pizza or a retail store, that the neighbors would be happy with going to the same use as what they've gotten.
Yeah.
The hardware store, I don't think cares
Right.
one way or the other, so.
But yeah, I think I could get you within
Yeah.
1 to 2 feet
I think that would be
of the
enough.
property lines just by
That'll
visual
work for me.
references. Yep.
That'll work for me.
I just want to make sure that you guys are comfortable with that. Okay, so
Good time to schedule the walk. You have any?
When does the
as
board
well?
typically
Do you want
take
to do a
walks?
Saturday morning?
it's
or-
going to be a Saturday morning at this point still. It's not going to be a weekday evening.
Next soonest Saturday is this Saturday, the 28th. Is that too soon?
Why can't it be a weekday night? I mean, if we do it at 5 o'clock, it's still late until, what, 6 or 7? This isn't going to take more than half an hour. Isn't it late till
Usually come-
6 or
Well, you're the
6:30?
usual one that's coming from Portland.
Yeah, but
Okay.
if you're telling me I can leave work a little
Oh.
early and do that and not give up a whole Saturday morning, I'm opting.
I can't do Monday evening, but I could do Tuesday. As long as it's around 5, I could do Tuesday. I could do Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday. So just Monday I can't.
Oh, what, next week?
Yeah.
Wednesday is April Fool's Day. Would that be?
Wednesday I can't do, but Tuesday I could.
I can do Tuesday, not Wednesday.
We're talking next week?
31st?
Yes.
Yeah.
I can do Tuesday, not Thursday.
All right, well, let's do it Tuesday,
5 o'clock?
5 o'clock.
Good.
I'll send out some reminders.
All right, thanks.
All right, thank you.
And Brian, you can be working on preliminary plan submission in the meantime. Probably not gonna, I mean, you'll need to obviously tweak the plan. Subdivision.
Hey, Brian, I had just one other question. I know you're trying to move on here. In terms of renovation, is there going to be pretty much extensive, replumbing and,
I don't care.
so,
Yeah, the layouts are changing quite a bit, and there can be sort of considered luxury apartments too. They're going to be nicely finished.
okay,
Okay.
all right, good.
You'll be getting a sign off from the sewer district, the water district, and, yep.
You left your A game.
He's still in spring training. Getting back in the swing of things.
That's right.
Thanks, Brian.
crowding the plate, though.
Next item on the agenda. Item 4 is the shoreland zone application of Dan Higgins for a permit to construct driveway within Priority 2 wetland off of Route 1, York Street. Judy, can you introduce this one to us?
Yes, applicant is Dan Higgins on this one, and 117 York Street LLC is, I believe, the owner of the road right-of-way leading to it, but Dan or Jim can clarify that with their presentation. The request is to install 8,633 square feet of fill in the Priority 2 wetland in order to create a driveway that will serve 2 lots in the business park / Branch Brook BPA zone. And it's shown, the zone lines are shown on the plan that you have, but guess I'll let James do his presentation and explain what this is all about.
Thank you, Judy. Members of the board. I'm Jim Logan, wetland scientist, soil scientist, and site evaluator with Albert Frick Associates. Sorry to say that I'm now in this line of work long enough to have been on this site originally in 1987. 88 was our beginning at Frick Associates working on this lot back, I think, 2 owners or maybe an owner before Dan came into it. It's got a long history down on Route 1 as a site that had been filled way back when. Portions of it out in the front. Very little activity out in the rear. Dan's lot is 7 acres, and it does include the easement across the front portion. The easement is part of a 50-foot right-of-way that was laid out by Frank Emery by Land Survey. I don't know exactly what year that was, but it was, I'm going to guess, at least 10 or 12 years ago. And that is this 50-foot strip that runs down what would be the southern edge of the property and ends right here. So we were fairly, consistent with that right-of-way. We stuck with that right-of-way as it was deeded for the lot, and that's largely why the geometry of the road going in and the wetland fill. Really, Mr. Higgins' intention right from the very beginning with this project was to make a lot split that would take the 7+ acres and make 2 conforming lots. Dan's been doing work in this town long enough to know that it would be foolhardy to try to make that lot split without coming to the board to look at this wetland crossing. The wetlands here are shown in blue. You can see how they bisect the property from northeast to southwest, and the largest portion of usable land, which I've pretty much just highlighted in green here. I didn't go across the BPA zone line because that portion of the lot is somewhat more restricted for what development can happen there and so forth. In order to use that BPA in the back section, the development on that back lot, or Lot B as we call it, would require a full hookup to this town sewer line, which is far, far, far and distant and further down Route 1 than the area near where the road connection is. So this conceived plan includes the location of 2 suitable septic locations out there, and we've included that in the data for supporting documentation that would show suitable soils for 2 modest uses. Initially, back in 2013, we were in numerous meetings with the planner here, and I had already started, quite frankly, putting a planning board application together in 2013. We were compelled to think about site plan review with the planner, and it forced so many decisions prematurely to be made. And we actually had a site plan application prepared, and we submitted it to the town, and a $500 application fee was paid for that. However, we pulled that application because by the time that got final, we had, I think, 4 different, maybe it was 4 waiver requests for things like lighting and parking, because we just absolutely could not conceive of what the proposed uses were going to be here. Dan Higgins doesn't know what the uses will be here. I don't know what the uses will be here. Again, I want to remind the board that our need tonight is to talk about the crossing of a priority 2 wetland to get to the bigger piece of upland, and hence have 2 conforming lots after the lot division takes place. Judy's presentation wasn't exactly correct, because the first lot, or Lot A as we conceive it, requires no wetland impact at all and has access off the existing gravel road. It is, in fact, only the bigger piece of upland on Lot B that we're trying to connect with this roadway. And hence we had a road plan prepared by John Oshie, engineer hired by Dan. That is the road plan that we had initially conceived for the site plan application. I did get a late-breaking memo from Chris Osterreiter. Judy handed it to me as I walked through the door, that do talk about some minor inconsistencies with John's plan and what we show, and we would certainly iron those details out. Having had a lot of opportunity to be on this site, real comfortable with the delineation. It's solid. I've been in and out of this site many, many seasons and different times a year over the years. The priority 2 rating is correct. I would like to remind the board that in the business park zone, you treat or your ordinance treats the priority 2 wetlands exactly like priority 3, with a 25-foot setback and a 25-foot zone. So that was the other momentum to keep us forward of that BPA zone line in the rear. That reverts back to regular priority 2 ratings of 50 feet. By the way, this gets to be very difficult to show on a plan where you're jumping across that zone line and going from 25 to 50 feet of setback. So we elected to show the board that our activities would stay on the front side of that. The plan does call for something under 9,000 square feet of wetland impact. That is in one of your priority rated wetlands, hence it does require a Tier 1 application from the DEP. That has been submitted concurrently with your review. Previously, I'd hold those out until I got board input, but having been involved a lot in these, I thought it would be prudent to get both things going at the same time. We could adjust and make revisions to any plans based either on your input or the DEP's at this time. So thusly, having submitted it in this fashion, we no longer are concerned about lighting. Stormwater impacts are not an issue now because we don't have to concern ourselves with the number of parking spaces that we would have to identify for a given use. The intention here is to put this driveway impact in to allow for uses already permitted in the zone. Dan Higgins, and I can show you this, their current, Dan's son is an excavator by trade, and they currently are using the front section of this property. Have no troubles, by the way, in and out with the access. The lower left-hand photo there is a photograph of the access road from the site going back towards Route 1. Osterreiter's memo talks about widths, and I actually got out there with a tape measure, and in fact, the road gravel, the base of the road fill out there in the front section is actually 24 feet across. And then the vegetation, because it's only gotten limited travel from Dan's pickup trucks going in and out, it has come into the wheel, kind of where the wheel travel lanes are. That's 12 feet wide, but in fact the gravel's 24, and you can see it's easily wide enough. I think the board would come to that conclusion on a site walk. I'd like to, if possible, maybe ask that Chris Osterreiter meet me out there and look at that front section of the road, so that he might be comforted somewhat by that road base, because I think that the front section of this road is no problem at all. I think predominantly your concerns, I would hope, would revolve around the new piece of road that would go in to this section. This is now looking from the edge of the fill kind of out into the woods where the right-of-way is, and where that road would go in and curve off to the right.
So that road was built to a certain standard, or was it not?
I wouldn't say there was necessarily a plan used to put it together, so I don't know about a standard, but I know that it's 24 feet wide in width, and it is very stable. There's no
In terms
erosion
of
there.
cross-section, it was
No, I
not
don't-
built to any particular standard?
Not to my knowledge. Can you speak to that, Dan?
No, that was put in by Bob Brown back in the
70s, late 60s?
late 60s.
I-
I've seen an aerial photograph of that up at Pillsbury's. I'm sure it grabbed that. But, there's a couple feet of gravel in there.
Oh, yeah. It's got a big, thick base of gravel in it. That's why I suspect if we could maybe do a couple of test pits out there in Chris's presence, he might be comforted by what we were showing him. But I'll leave that up to the board as to what they want to do. You can see the nature of the site. It's been a gravel surface there for years. Dan's been plowing it so that they can get in and out. I think that they had some firewood there for a while, and that's gone now. But we also, while we were there, I took a photograph of what the next road down looks like. This is the head of Industrial Road, the very next road down. I would, maybe minus the pavement, I would suspect that when we're all through and fully graded out, we're not going to have something all that dissimilar than this. Although not the same big number of buildings down the right-hand side of it as on the neighboring lot. So I wanted to bring these to the board so that you could have a sort of a feel for the site. I assume you'll want a site walk down there as well. In this fashion, I don't think we'll need a waiver request, because we've narrowed the issues down more to the scope of what the board normally would have a review on. Osterreiter did comment on the possibility of further minimizing wetland impacts. I think the engineer's plan shows 3-to-1 side slopes, and Chris wanted us to consider 2-to-1, which we would certainly do. DEP has not asked us to do that yet, but it may come up with the DEP as well. I've been in contact with Audie Arbo, is the new licensing individual in Portland that has this application, and that is in progress as well. I did take the liberty, the subject hasn't come up yet, but I did take the liberty of going down and measuring site distances. This is a really good location for an entrance road. The traffic engineer would be real happy. I think we had over 1,800 feet to the south and over 1,400 feet back to the north. And I think those are conservative estimates. There is a speed limit sign some 960 feet north of the entrance road here that cuts the speed limit down to 35 going into town, And then coming south from that sign back towards our site, it's 50. So we have a 50-mile-an-hour zone in front of the site. Thus, you know, I think we're comfortable with sight distance as well. So I will add those notes to the next round of plans that come through for your review, and we'll make an attempt to clarify any of the discrepancies that Chris Osterreiter talked about in the wetland impact figures and so forth, and the width of the road that was specified on John Ogie's plan as opposed to what we show on ours. So we'll make those consistent. Questions from the board?
Alexandra, you have any questions at this time?
I was reviewing the note from Chris, and it is on number 5, and he's talking about you may want to consider a T turnaround or something in that area. I didn't hear you mention anything about that.
I didn't mention anything about it because I'm not the road engineer, and I haven't yet had a chance to talk with the road engineer about that. So that's something I would defer. It's a little bit out from under my hat, but likely that would be something else I would anticipate having a chance to talk with Chris directly about his memo and have him elaborate on that, and perhaps I could have that revised and into the plan for the next plan set.
Anything else? Anything else at this time? Thank you. David?
I guess I have a couple of questions to start off with in terms of how much clearing of the land are you going to be doing? I know you'll obviously a building window you're going to want to clear, but my question is how much, since this is going to be screened naturally from Route 1, I'm wondering how much is going to be removed in the way of trees, other than what you've got to do for the development.
I don't think we've got any idea how many trees
We
yet.
don't anticipate anything.
I don't-
We've got 1,000 feet of trees between us and Route 1. Is it 950 feet?
Something like that. Yeah.
I don't own that property. Somebody could come in there and do something with it, and I've heard talk of a large building being proposed there. I don't think anybody in this room knows where this piece of property is. I mean, it's so far back, you know. We're right beside Pillsbury's, and if you slow down your car and you look, you'll see my road going in there.
I mean, David, I would think that our intention at this point anyway is to suggest everything that would happen on that lot would be forward of that BP and BBBA zone line.
Right.
And then beyond that, we'd have buffers to the wetlands of 25 feet and the property line setbacks. I'm assuming Dan wouldn't want to take the trees from any of that portion of the property, and it would be essentially just the piece of upland that's meeting the requirements.
You're only impacting what you need to put the driveway.
Correct.
The
Correct.
people that
Right.
develop those lots are
Correct.
going to end up having to come back.
Yeah, I want to make that abundantly clear to the board.
To site
You're-
review,
Yeah.
to propose how they're going to get a building
Right.
on those lots.
I want to draw everybody's attention to this note that has a bold print on the note that says, any proposed use or level of use that exceeds what is represented on this plan will be required to return to the site plan review board for review. And I think it would be site plan review because we're not a subdivision, as in the case of
Correct.
the previous one.
Yeah.
Because those would have elements of lighting and stormwater and parking, because we would know a specific use that would be proposed. Obviously, this lot is not as sumptuous as the one in the rear. It doesn't breathe as well. It's a little bit smaller. We realize that. It still complies. The use in the front is going to be a lot less than the use in the rear, likely, just because of space limitations. So we recognize that.
Was there consideration of coming in through the upland on Lot A in order to get to Lot B?
What do you think? I just fell off the turnip truck? No, yes, absolutely. I'm sorry. I've worked, for those in the audience, and I've worked with Judy a lot of years, and I'm sorry, that's a little tongue-in-cheek. That's typical of our call and response. But yes, we looked at that very carefully. And quite frankly, by the time you make those radius curves and so forth, you start to use up all the land by meeting the geometry requirements of roads in your town to get in to that piece of the property. Basically, what it does is it totally cashes out the front lot in order to do that, and we would be pushing all of the development into the rear. We didn't necessarily want to do that. So, I mean, it doesn't, your proposal or your suggestion would have us redoing the entire right-of-way easement and so forth. It would require a lot of extra work. And quite frankly, the geometry just didn't work. So it wasn't favoring. It was one of those cases where the environmental dominoes don't lean all in the same direction.
Well, and it would be a waiver of the road standard versus a waiver of the shoreline standard, and I wondered,
Well,
I don't know how much
it's a
of
question
a
of the-
waiver you'd need on that radius curve getting in, but.
Right. We looked at the geometry of that. And quite frankly, that was more evident with a site plan review with elements that were more evidently coming to the surface. In this case, what we are looking for is something that'll still meet fire and safety standards, something that's going to allow the fire truck to get in and out in the event of a problem, and not necessarily, during site plan review with lots more traffic trips, that road geometry was going to be even more of a problematic. So we did look at that. We didn't find it to be advantageous. These are priority 2 wetlands, I'll grant you, but we are still at the tier 1 level. I think we can make the 8,000 number even smaller than it is because I haven't pushed the engineer to consider 2-to-1 side slopes yet. Mr. Osterreiter has made that imperative, so we will be doing that, and I assume that number we had to start with, which was fairly modest, can be reduced further. So, but yes, and the long answer, coming back around, yes, we did consider that.
Jim, are there plans to develop I guess it would be the northeast portion of Lot A? So, right there.
I think it's as developed right now as it's expected to be. They're using it pretty much for stockpiling, temporary stockpiles and so forth. They're going in and out. He's had some pipe material there, plastic piping from time to time from jobs that they've stockpiled and then took away. I don't anticipate a whole lot more use than that. Initially, we thought there might be an office there someday, a very small office building.
For myself and my boy, might put a shop there for his excavator or things like that, and we store material there, culverts and stuff that's in and out all the time.
So, I mean, your plan is to connect both these lots with the road to B and then from B across to A?
No, there's already a road into Lot A as it exists. It's all one lot. That's the effective area they can use right now because they can't go through the wetland. So he has a 7-acre lot, only this of which he can use. Because this is the only piece of road he can get in there at all. None of this is constructed.
Oh, I understand that.
So what I'm saying is, the only use he has right now is, in fact, this small portion of the lot. He's here today to ask that we can get this connection to get better use of the larger piece of upland that's available to him, and consequently be able to make a legal lot split that will not be in vain.
Yeah, I'll just come out and say what I really feel.
I wouldn't expect it to be any other way, David.
To me, the natural approach to this and the greatest setback you can achieve from the resource is going to be to come through A, and you'll do a minor wetland crossing from your proposed building window that you have, or the proposed developed section of it, and B, and you'll have a slightly longer one, but you're not going to have the length and the width. Well, I wouldn't say the width may be the same, but you're not certainly going to have the impact on the priority 2 wetlands that are there with if you go across A to the second section of A. Right there, yep.
But that doesn't still get us across. We're gonna need two wetland impacts still to get to the bigger piece.
I understand, but
And you're doing the entire thing outside the right of way. Basically, you're creating access for Lot B through Lot A out of the right of way. We attempted to do all that within the right of way because that's where their deeded access was. I want to remind you that the right of way is this.
yes.
And we looked at every option within the right of way to get to here, and this is the one that is the smallest amount of impact.
Then how would you propose to get to the sort of island piece that is A, which says this is going to be a proposed Lot A?
The whole thing is a proposed Lot A. That box that you're looking at applies to this whole area, not just this.
How would you get to that?
Somebody would have to come back and propose a wetland fill, but it wouldn't be me tonight. I mean, it's part of the land area that's available for Lot A. Don't know what someone's going to want to do there. It's hard to, it's just, DEP won't even entertain an option for an application for something that you're speculating on. So I can present to them because it's legitimizing a lot split. This is a harder one to sell because we don't know what the use is going to be there beyond what it is today. And we don't need a wetland impact here for the use that Lot A has today. So, the notion is we really need to get to this. This is the primary objective here. And the planner actually suggested, this part could be developed as well with a more aggressive approach.
If it was on public sewer.
And may very well someday that someone comes along and manages that negotiation, but it wasn't going to be us.
Now, you're requesting a waiver on the commercial road standard, correct, for this?
If it's going to be an official waiver request, yes. If it takes a waiver, that would be the only one I'm asking for. Again, I accepted from the engineer, the professional engineer, the road plan, thinking it was in conformance with the ordinance. If it's not, we'll have that discussion and we'll either step up and try to make something that's fully conforming or ask the official waiver. To some extent, we probably need to get that site walk scheduled and have the board out there prior to, to finalizing some of these conclusions.
Yeah, I'm wondering about what investigation you've done for any type of public sewer hookup.
Just enough to find out how impossibly or near impossible it'll be to get there. Because even whatever was being conceived for this one was still going to have to work across private property to get there. As I understood it from Mr. Osterreiter, the town's improved pump station is down, I don't even know how far down. It's down on the low side of Pillsbury, so it's got to be, well, if we're over 1,000 to here, it's going to be another 500 or 600 feet down Route 1 from our site. And it involves crossing private property in places. So that's what makes it really improbable today for what it is we're talking about with these so-called modest uses that we might conceive today. We have septic designs for what could be 10 employees at each location. And to me, and we're so far from the sewer that it's probably satisfactory to go forward with, in that your ordinance does contemplate septic systems when you're far enough away from the public sewer. Your ordinance does suggest anybody doing development out here needs to be connected to the public sewer. And that makes good intuitive sense, but I got news for you. That small wastewater system just on this side of that zone line is not going to mean it tinkers. It won't matter to the other than it's in the ordinance.
Do you know that Pillsbury has a private sewer connection that runs right up the side of Industrial Way? It's only 430 feet from where your property would be for Lot B. So it's only a case of pursuing.
Boy. Do you have any idea how much wetland is over here?
If you came right across the back of the property.
Here?
No,
Here?
Pillsbury. Yeah, Garrett Pills, right there.
Yeah, do you see this wetland here? This goes like this. So, we can look at it, but to me, if you're concerned about wetland impacts, running the sewer line through the wetland.
Well,
Is
we've
it, you know-
done that before, and then we go through restoration, right? It's pretty easy.
We can look at it, but again, I think that the costs are so prohibitive. You'll find that if he was to run any kind of cost analysis, there's no way he's not, for him to pursue that, to connect, to get what we're trying to do here, it's going to be a long nickel.
But
and
if the lot in front does get developed, and I don't know if it's going to be or not,
Right.
but if it
does.
does and it's hooked to sewer, it would, I assume, make it more workable to bring sewer to both the front and the back,
Right.
right along that right of
Absolutely.
way.
At that point, the thought was, and what I heard from a little bit of rumination about this lot, is that there was the possibility of maybe something here or here in the way of a collector. Originally, the building that was conceived for here was going to have the sewer coming somewhere out in the middle of the building. Several hundred feet that we would have to get from this property edge to that, and that's a private sewer line, not a public sewer line. So there was some uncertainty with that, and we tried to work with whoever was doing this to no avail, had no response, got no feedback whatsoever, and I'm not hearing anything but crickets when it comes to any proposal for the front lot. So, we just felt as though, knowing what we know, we're going to go to the board and sound you out. I think Judy's correct. Obviously, anything that goes here, if it had a public sewer connection, would certainly change the picture in the back for Dan's land. But we don't know what's going to happen with that.
The other thing you can do is if you're concerned about the wetland impact behind where Garrett Pillsbury is now, there's a paved surface in between both buildings, the front building and the back building. So if you wanted to, and you could come down the road that exists now with access, the right of way in, and then just cross to hook up.
You're talking about coming down this way?
Right. Not all the way to Route 1.
Wow.
Okay, Pillsbury's
there's
got
some-
two buildings. There's a way to get.
Right. You've got some complications in what you're suggesting. There's a major ditch line through here as well that's carrying drainage water, and I don't know. I'll have.
I think we're just getting ahead of ourselves. I mean, we're only here to ask if I can cross that wetland, and I don't know what's going to go. If somebody proposes to buy that property from me in the rear and have 25 employees and produce widgets, then we'd find a way to get into the sewer. But as it stands right now, I may build a shop out there for my son to repair his excavator and store his dump trucks and things like that, but I don't know what's going to happen out there. And I don't want to have the board put a condition on that I've got to hook into town sewer, when the ordinance says if I'm far enough away from that, I shouldn't have to. And all I'm proposing is to just get the board out there to agree that we're meeting all the standards to cross that wetland. And I don't want to build a building there or anything right now, and if I do, then I will come back and get the proper help. But I just don't want to get involved in planning ahead for the sewer and lighting and waivers. And I would just like everybody to say, well, come on, take a look, and you've met all the standards, let's go across the wetlands.
Okay, I'm done.
Thanks, David. Richard?
Thank you. Couple questions. Jim? Lot B, how many usable acres or square footage or whatever is that?
Oh, I knew you'd ask that technical question of me.
So you got an answer, right?
Number on the plan, but it's hard to know.
Yeah, there's plenty of.
You can come within a few feet.
There is a number on the plan that says how much upland is there, but
Okay.
that's not a rendition of what's shaded in green here. About the best I can do, David, because I don't have,
Dick.
or Richard, is because I don't have a scale with me, is to say at 100, or at a 60 scale, this is, that you might have 2.5 or 3 inches up this side and more like 4 inches up this side. You've got an area there that's easily 200 by, I don't know, it's a odd shape, but it's probably 200 by 500, something like that, or 200 by 400, might be 80,000 square feet of upland. But if you want a more specific number,
No,
I
that was close enough.
can get us more
That's
specific number.
close enough.
Okay.
So you're asking us to fill 8,000 square feet to cross that wetland, when it does appear that if we went across Lot A, that you'd fill a lot less to get to the same Lot B. Is that right?
Yeah, we'd have to work it out, but I would guess it might be something like half of the amount of wetland fill. Might be
Okay.
4,000, 4,300, something like that. Again, no
Why-
exemptions allowed.
Why wouldn't the town, given the fact that this is in the Route 1 south area, and is some of the small amount of industrial and business land that we have left in the town, why wouldn't we as a town, since there is no specific proposal to use this property other than just to cross the wetland, why wouldn't we as a town want to wait until there is a specific proposal that perhaps will tie in some of these other areas and make a viable, a real viable project in what is really diminishing usable business and industrial land?
Because I don't think it's gonna go any further than that, because of my brothers in the water district. I've offered that land to the water district, and do not want it, because the plume goes the wrong way, and it doesn't go to the Branch Brook, it goes to its town. And I think the only developable piece of land right there, the two sections, Lot A and Lot B.
There is a strip here alongside, this is an L-shaped lot here, and this piece up in here has a lot of the very same wetland aspect that our lot does. This is the land that's owned by the water district, and I don't think Beef next door is interested in any of your property either. So in terms of the connectivity of other properties, I'm not seeing a lot more possibility here. I understand the board's having some heartburn over the wetland impact. That's clear. And again, the coloring shows that it could be something coming in through this way, but I'm telling you, to make this curve here work, wetland impact, you see this nice big radius curve here? This is meeting some of your geometry standards. We're going to have a heck of a time with anything more than just a driveway coming into this lot. To make it, to make a T there. So, again, I just don't think that the geometry of the curve of a road through that section is conducive to running it that way. And our intention, again, was to not so encumber Lot A with a right-of-way through it, because if we put a driveway through like that, it likely will need its right-of-way width and so forth. It's going to take a lot more land area up in order to do that. Probably devaluing Lot A entirely, making it the piece of Lot A that's currently buildable, not buildable. So or usable. Basically, the road would bisect the upland here.
Okay, you are correct in that I'm having trouble wanting to fill 8,000 square feet for what purpose?
For the allowed uses in the business park zone.
Yep.
There's a man that's paying taxes on this land all along. Now, I understand you'd like to hold off for just the right project to come along, but if we're meeting the spirit and the intent of the ordinance, and I know David is not quite there yet,
Well, I'm with David.
I understand that. I understand that. I understand
I think you haven't demonstrated that that's the best and the least impact way to get to Lot B.
Right, but you understand how the less impact way, when it comes up against all the rest of the requirements of the town's ordinance, becomes problematic.
Well, the only thing that you gave as a reason was geometry.
The road.
I flunked geometry.
The curve of the road. The curve of the road. We'll need to involve the engineer a little bit further in this one.
Okay. Well, I think you're here to get our feedback so we can make this project either work or not work.
Got it.
And so I guess that's my feedback from glancing at what you've presented so far, that I need to see better proof that this is the least impact way to access Lot B. And that's all I got.
Thanks, Richard. And I think the problem, obviously, we're having is that right now this is all one lot, and your Lot A and B, as you have it depicted, is just a construct that you're putting forward. Theoretically, there could be other constructs of other types of splits that might still get you 2 lots on this property and getting the road in over what you call now Lot A. So I guess until we can see some demonstration that there is no other workable solution for this, I think you're going to have a hard time convincing us that bisecting that large part of wetland that you have indicated is, much larger than obviously we see on the plan. It connects to the south and the north. It's a large wetland complex.
It is. That's what makes it your
Bisecting
priority, too.
Yeah.
Right.
That's why obviously we're having a hard time seeing that.
Understood. And I can put together some type of an alternatives analysis for you, just the way we're forced to do it with the DEP, and hopefully satisfy. We looked initially at going straight all the way. If you look, it's even less impact to go straight to the end of the right of way. And presumably the town wouldn't either, ultimately, because it is that higher sensitivity zone.
Although we did amend that zone to allow the same uses that are in the business park, the abutting business park district.
Provided the sewer hookup is there.
Provided the sewer hookup is there, yeah.
It's clear, Judy, it's clear. And we've had that, we've circled that around.
It's too bad, and it's also too bad all the abutters kind of aren't working together to share
There's the crux of the
share the
work right
costs,
there.
get the road right away in there so it works for everyone, get the sewer in there so it works for everyone.
Bottom line is everybody's interests are not the same. And we just can't, we can drag the horse over to the trough, but we can't, we can even push the head down into the water, but you can't make them drink. And we've fought that on several occasions already with this. So I'll attempt to put together some kind of an alternatives analysis that specifically describes other options we looked at and the reasons why they were improbable, and maybe not the best choice.
Yeah, obviously we need to see no reasonable alternative exists, and right now we kind of see some reasonable alternatives in our mind, and so we need that disproven if we're going to be able to rule that is at least.
When are the wetlands going to be visible? Hey.
No.
Don't say that.
Boy, there's so many doomsayers out there to think that the snow is going to take till June to melt. It's not the case. I'm guessing April 10th. That's the beginning of the vernal pool season in southern Maine. I gotta be able to see the pools. So we gotta.
Does vernal pool season get delayed when it's?
Frogs don't come
a
back.
season like
Frozen
this?
frogs.
It's interesting you ask the question, because those are published dates right in the
Yeah.
Natural Resource
I know.
Protection Act.
I know, I never thought about that.
However, the people that do the work always put out, there's always a series of emails and Twitters, and we're listening to the first of the frogs croaking, and you'll hear the first Twitter or tweets you're hearing are coming from Massachusetts. Okay, now we're hearing them in Mass. Okay, and then southern New Hampshire, and literally we're posting it coming north, and that's how we'll keep tabs. It might be April 11th this year, not the 10th. So does the site board the planning board anticipate a site walk over here or before snow leaves, or?
Not yet, I don't think.
I think they're going to want to see those wetlands delineated like they usually do for
Okay.
shoreline
So
map.
we'll hold off then for a future site
Do
walk
you
date?
Do you want to give me a call when you know it's a
Yep, I'll keep you posted.
time to walk, and then I can
Does the board-
contact the board?
Would the board be comfortable if not every single square foot of snow is gone and we're looking at patchy snow in some of the wetland bottom? Because in the woods, you're gonna find shady
Yeah,
spots that are
that's
gonna
all
be.
right. As long as we can get out there and kind of see what's going on,
Yep.
and we can navigate ourselves without breaking an ankle.
Well, now hey, it's a piece of woods. I can't, I'll do the best I can. I'll clear the best trail I can. I've made good trails for the planning board before. So we'll hold on setting a date then.
Yes.
Yeah, if you
We
can give me a buzz, I can then schedule something with the planning
Nice,
board.
really.
And maybe you can give me a couple of possible
Options.
dates that work for you.
Yep, okay. Just as soon as we have a sense of the snow cover.
Do you have a comment on this, Arlene? Sure.
Hi, Arlene Poisson. I'm in full agreement with David Smith and Richard Smith. I think this is a horrible idea. And
I
buyers
can't
of,
hear you. Can you speak up?
I'm in agreement with David Smith and Richard Smith. I think this plan is a horrible idea. Buyers of, large lots with large amounts of wetland, in many cases, pay less for those lots because they understand that wetlands are not supposed to be destroyed. And here's an attempt by a developer to try to go right through that wetland and maximize the value of the property that he's bought. And it makes me furious. I suggest, there's nothing wrong with accessing through that Lot A. It's a 90-degree turn. So what? And I would propose that the road go right through Lot A, and to minimize the impact to the wetland and minimize carbon emissions that are causing planetary disaster. Truly minimize the impact to the wetlands and go through the least amount of wetlands possible.
Thank you.
Just as a disclaimer, she may have said she agreed with me, but I didn't call this a horrible plan. I think there's some issues that we'd like clarified, but certainly if the plan meets both the spirit and the technical aspects of our zoning, then it's a plan. We just don't think that it's there yet. So don't characterize it. I said it was a horrible plan. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Higgins. Next item on our agenda. Sketch plan application of Boothby Road subdivision by Aaron Moore LLC. Another new project. Judy, if you could. No, we've got Jim again for this one.
Okay, this is a project located at 61 Boothby Road. It is a proposed 9-lot subdivision located on 13 and a half acres. It is proposed to be an open space subdivision, or what most folks call a cluster subdivision under our standards. And under our standards, if you are doing a cluster subdivision, you need to show that it can conform to our conventional zoning requirements for the number of lots you are proposing to be clustered. You have to show that they could meet our zoning under conventional zoning standards. So I guess I will let Jim do his explanation of how they're meeting our standards.
Thank you, Judy. I was contacted last fall to look at this land. I was fortunately able to see the totality of it before any snow cover. We completed our wetlands delineation back in November of this one. This is a pretty simple wetland system that is predominated by the emergent coastal wetland that's nearest to the bridle path. This is a piece of the old bridle path down here, I believe. And this is the coastal wetland. That coastal wetland, to review for the board, forms the starting point of measurement. The landward edge of that coastal wetland forms the beginning point of measurement for the shoreland zone and the resource protection zone. It's pretty consistent with the flood elevation also on that piece of property. Along the beginning of the wooded section, that's probably better evident on the air photo. I have several copies today. I didn't put the air photo background behind your maps because I think it can be complicating to a map. However, it is helpful to see the relationship with the other dwellings in the neighborhood and where the tree cover is more evident versus where it's not. Very evident along this boundary line. Again, this creates the 250-foot shoreline zone and resource protection. We have modified our map to be more accurate than the town's map, although the town did have a pretty good rendition of this. Connected to those emergent wetlands, the priority 1 is priority 3 rated forested wetlands, and they're priority 3 because they're not shown on your map anywhere, and they're forested. So by default, if they're not emergent and they're not mapped with one of your numbered wetland numbers on the official wetland map, they default to priority 3, and they have their 25-foot setback, and that is also the width of the zone around that particular wetland type. You can see there's a relatively good-sized piece of upland here within that wetland system, large enough to site a dwelling onto. Hence, we came here with a plan that shows a lot at that location. There is, in fact, ample upland area within the forested section of the property to create an additional lot. That bared itself out both in the lot calculations for net density as well as the creation of a conforming lot, either in the conventional subdivision layout or this open space concept that we've
Can you show the
prepared.
conventional, because I definitely don't see the buildability of Lot 6 on your conventional plan.
Lot 6, Judy, contains this piece of upland here, and all these islands of upland.
On your conventional layout?
Where's the... Not a giant lot, but you could fit a house onto it, and it does meet its upland requirement for the zone.
So it's just Lot 7, you'd have to cross wetland to
Correct.
get to a buildable part.
Correct, correct.
In that golden hatched area, is that a crossing? Is that what
It
that
is a wetland crossing,
Okay.
and there is a note that goes with that that would suggest that that too would require a DEP approval because it's within one of your priority rated wetlands. No exemptions are allowed. We think we could make that less than 4,300 or something that would be akin to the exemption that would be allowed in these type of wetlands otherwise if it wasn't in the town of Kennebunk in this priority 3 rated wetland. Mind you that this impact is outside the shoreland and the resource protection zone as well. Okay.
Say that again?
Wetland impact is outside the resource protection zone and the
That
RP
proposed
zone.
driveway is outside,
Well, it's inside your shoreline
Okay.
wetland, but not your
Okay.
shoreline zone. I'm talking about the 250 shoreline zone to the emergent edge, what you typically call your shoreline zone. These other zones are shoreline wetland zones, and they're not, they're
they're also
similar.
shoreline.
Oh, I know they are.
Okay,
I know.
okay.
But they're not the same exactly. The rules for septic systems are different in those locations. The rules for construction of dwellings, completely different. You're not, anyway. So yeah, that's a shoreline wetland zone for sure. That's why it's not an exempted fill, and it would require a permit from the DEP. Okay? Yes. Yes, you can.
Sorry. Can I interrupt for a second?
Sure.
Can we go back to lot 6 on the conventional again? Sure. On lot 7, I see where you've drawn out a buildable upland area, but where on lot 6 have you drawn that, other than what you just did now?
That's it. We didn't put setback lines on these. This conventional plan, when I've seen them submitted to the town, they haven't necessarily gone to the extent of putting meets and bounds on the lines and so forth, and basically just showing that you have a buildable area that would be large enough to site a house into in a conventional sort of a layout. We could do that on that site. It might not be a sumptuous, large palatial home, but we could fit one there. Right here.
Well, my concern was that you had it depicted on lot 7, and it wasn't depicted on lot 6 the same way. At least I couldn't figure it out.
If it's the same conventional you're looking at, this is your
Only one I've got. What?
If you're comparing lot 7 on
They haven't done 7
open
either.
space plan,
Yeah.
that has a building and.
Oh, I saw that, I'm not talking about the open space, though. Okay, all right. Thank you.
Okay. Jim, where would you, on the conventional, I follow what you're saying, where would you consider your building window to be with the fact that you've got wetlands on that site?
For this lot?
Yeah, no, for 6.
Right here?
For 6 conventional.
Right here.
Right,
Upslope with a priority 3 wetland,
okay,
and this piece, this is the lot line we have.
right.
It includes all this land area because these upland islands all added up to the requisite upland area requirement for this lot.
Right. And
Again,
the supposition is all those little islands can't be built on for 6, but they're part of the calculation.
As any
Okay.
net residential
So
calculation, yes.
you'd want to be on the left, or excuse me, the right side of that lot, if you want to think of it. I haven't got my north. You want to be on the northeast side of the lot, the upland portion and out of the wetland to build the house.
Yes.
That's
If
the right
we were
answer.
conceiving this proposed plan,
Okay.
yes, but we're not. We're showing
I understand.
it's conforming so that we can move on to the open space
Okay.
plan and what we really think is hopeful to happen.
Okay.
Jim,
thanks.
let me follow up on that. And on either 6, on lot 6, you don't have to fill any wetland to build building,
Correct.
okay? Thank you.
That's good.
Yeah, obviously, I know you want to get to your open space, but it's important for us to understand the
Understood.
conventional so that you
Understood.
can
And
do
just
show
so
us.
you know, the cul-de-sac for that conventional layout also would impact shoreline zone.
That was the reason why this is a very sensible site to consider open space by reducing ever so slightly the required lot sizes and the geometry of a road and so forth. In a open space subdivision, you can have a better use or protection of the natural resources, I believe, by shortening the road, making less impervious space. We don't need quite as much road front on each of those lots, and that was one of the things that was hurting us with conventional here, was the need to have that minimum road front on every single lot. It also got to be problematic with dealing with stormwater runoff and having a place to have set aside for it. We'll have a little less impervious surface as a result of this layout. I'm a little remiss because I sent this sketch plan through without the 50-foot buffer that we would need to add to the Erin Moore property, because this was an outlot split off before we've come to you, and so the same 50-foot buffer down this side needs to occur here, so we'll have some adjustment of houses as a result. We're aware of that. And I guess the only other thing I would mention at this time is that in a previous meeting I had with Judy, we were looking at the ordinance, and she brought up the possibility of, when we did this layout, we knew that the required 75-foot buffer to roads, such as Boothby Road, would be in effect. Judith brought to my attention as a street with its required 75 feet of buffer for an open space subdivision, which seems counterintuitive to me, but we may want a discussion of that at some point. If this piece, this little existing piece of Squirrel Lane is going to be treated like a street, and it should have a 75-foot buffer on the front as well as a 50-foot buffer on the back. By the way, this is what that so-called street looks like. It's a driveway. It goes to two houses, but it's a driveway. So we may want to talk more with the board about a possible waiver for that. I think we're going to probably chat with the only possible 3 abutters that could be affected by a decision at that location. Your definition of a buffer is fairly loose when it talks about what it can consist of. Might ask the board if you'd consider a waiver to something less, but perhaps an enhanced buffer. So maybe we don't go the full 75, but we buffer it with plantings much more. You can see what this is the view of the field right now from the edge of this. When you get up on top here, there's no buffer. It's an open field. So rather than 75 feet of setback with an open field, we might maybe ask for some relief there and an enhanced planting perhaps at that location. Or even whether it's a street or not, and that should get the 75-foot buffer that, say, Boothby Road, would have had or should have as a town road. So I'm bringing that to the board's attention at this point. I do have some photos here that were taken before a whole lot of snow anyway. You can see that the predominant location for houses is this open farm field that virtually has no wetland in it at all. It's a unique site, and it's very favorable actually to what we're proposing in that it has multiple levels, so that these houses that we're talking about, while they are somewhat close in proximity to one another, they will be on different levels as the topography slopes down, so that the houses are anticipated to be not at the exact same level and therefore not quite looking in the same each other's windows. We did approach Eric Peterson to come up with building footprints, because we wanted these to reflect accurate house sizes that would eventually be conceived that would be synonymous with the rest of the neighborhood. That was the other thing. We were trying to be sensitive to the neighbors. Any folks in the neighborhood that will be notified and might want to have input when it comes to public hearing for this. We were trying for houses that would be similar in size and sort of type as the neighbors. There is one well-established existing subdivision. I think that was built in 1986, and that actually has and contains the sewer connection, the sewer network connection that we'll go to. This project and this property was afforded the easement for the connection to that sewer system. Jason Vafiatas is with me tonight. He's the engineer that we've retained to be working on the engineering details for this project. He's already contacted the sewer district. We've also had quite a bit of contact with the town on the water line that currently is on the opposite side of Boothby Road from this site, and we'll need to bring it across. We're mindful of the schedule for paving of Boothby Road because we'll want to get the water onto our side before that final top coat of paving takes place there. So this is a project served by public sewer and water. I've sent the copies of the two plans, or this plan particularly, to all the utility companies as well, and so they're aware that there's a project proposed here. I think that's about all I have.
Jim, I was looking to see if there was any notation on your plan for where the Deer Trees sewer easement, would be. In other words, the abutting development.
Yeah, it's.
That you alluded to.
I can show you where that is. It's not it's certainly not documented on our plan yet because we hadn't gotten to those details of elements yet. But we do know the connection is through here.
Okay. Yep. I see it.
Wetlands, and it is that situation that you talked about in there earlier. It's going to be a lot less than 400 and some feet, but we will go through that wetland with that utility line. It will be a temporary impact, and it will be bedded back to its original elevation and restored. Presently we've reserved this small area here for a future stormwater management type system. We don't know just what it's going to be yet. We haven't done the full grading yet on this, so that we don't know exactly all the details.
A couple of really quick questions.
Mm-hmm.
Are you going to have under drainage proposed for this in any type of curbing, or are you just going to have sheet flow, or?
We were going to have curbing. Did you want to come up and? Jason Vafiatas, the design engineer.
Evening, Board. My name is Jason Vafiatas with Vafiatas Engineering Design, and I'm handling the site engineering element. So if anyone had any questions on that, I could field those at this time. You mentioned under drainage. Yes, we're planning on a Cape Cod curb with storm catch basins and storm drain going down to this stormwater area.
The other, is this going to be proposed for a town road at some point? This is going to remain private, and so.
Yes, we don't anticipate this to ever be taken over by the town.
But it will be built to town standard?
The road will be built to town standards. However, Jason may want to refer to some of the geometry of that as well.
As far as width and section, it will be built to town standards, but the town standards for horizontal geometry, which actually we sort of talked about the last project, where you need to have a certain radius of a curve and then tangent between reverse curves. Due to the way that this property is sort of situated, it's sort of its own geometry, and the only real access, which is already existing, we can't meet the horizontal geometry. So we're requesting a waiver for that, and that would kick us to maintaining it as a private road,
Unless we
ad
granted
infinitum.
you a waiver for that.
Yeah, I still don't think there's a.
Yeah, I was pretty certain that Chris Osterreiter had concerns that even with that waiver that the town would accept it as a road or not. I didn't get a strong feeling from Chris Osterreiter that present, though, have suggested it was going to stay private.
And that's okay. I'm asking the question that if it were proposed to the town at some point in the future, we'd know what the constraints were.
Well, it would certainly be part of the approval process, and I would,
Right.
yes. And
That's what I mean.
It would likely be, at the time it was proposed for conversion to the town, that it would be looked at a second time more carefully again by probably the fire chief and public works. Well, in this, but for acceptance, it would be another.
Okay.
It still has to be maintained, even though it's not
Exactly.
proposed for town acceptance, so.
No, that's fine. In serving 9 houses, you want the road available for fire rescue and that sort of thing. I mean, we'd look at that. I guess the last question I had was, you say that there's ledge, and I'm not asking for where it is and how deep it is, but is it suspect that maybe there's going to be some blasting for some of these sites? Okay. So we're good with a blasting ordinance?
I haven't really looked closely at it, but I'm sure it's gonna, I mean.
Your neighbors will.
Yeah, oh, I'm sure of it, and I'm pretty certain that we would wanna work with the very best professionals in the industry to make sure that the blasting was done in an appropriate manner, that sufficient matting was put down and small charges were set, not big charges, and, it generally means more blasts and smaller ones, right? And nowadays, I don't know what the extent of this will be for individual homes. Many times I find with the road construct, I would anticipate some blasting, but you might find for some of these homes, they prefer not even to blast, but maybe to use a jackhammer on the end of a hydraulic hammer on the end of the excavator, as still noisy, but a lot safer method of getting the ledge out, depending on just how much has to be removed for a house foundation. So, and some of the lots, I'm going to say, will not require blasting because there are deep inclusions of soil out there as well. My guess is the uppermost portion of the road will be ledgy and ledge control. There's bedrock evident in the backyard of that. You'll get a full foundation without hitting ledges. Is my, at least based on the way I was driving the auger in some of those sites in the field.
Okay.
We haven't had any backhoe test pits out there to verify, but we haven't done a soils map yet either.
And Deer Trees had to deal with some ledge removal when they were constructing the road for Governor's Way.
Yeah, we anticipate some, and certainly some sensitivity to the neighbors is in order because, they're nearby.
But those are my questions. Thanks.
Alexander?
I just want to be clear that you're going to disturb this wetlands, almost 5,000 square feet, just to access one lot, lot number 7.
That was our thought.
Okay, so that's a lot of wetlands to disturb, even though it meets the requirements. It's a lot of wetlands to disturb just for the one lot. Meaning without that lot?
I've done an awful lot of wetland permitting in my time, and 4,000 square feet doesn't ever seem like a lot of wetland filling to me because among permit applications that we do, that's a small amount.
And we were just looking at the previous lot
At 8,000.
division at 8,000, and we were feeling for that to be divided into 2 lots so he could access his land, that we were holding back on that, but yet we're willing to consider 5,000 to have one lot when there's already 8 lots on here that wouldn't need any wetland disturbance.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Richard, do you have comments at this stage?
Yeah, I was going to bring up the same concern about crossing the filling that wetland for access to Lot 7. A lot of fill for one lot. When that's basically surrounded by wetland out there. So I did, but that is the only wetland fill you're requesting, isn't it, Jim?
It is.
Okay.
Good.
I was just going to say, I know that in the past that this board has allowed wetland crossings to buildable upland. And
I know, I've been here for several of them, at least.
there is precedent for this, and I know the little nibbling that goes on and the concern for it, 4,000 feet here, 4,000 square feet here, 8,000 square feet here, 320, 3,200 someplace else, it begins to add up. But I think we have precedent, and it's not, my preference would be that it not have to be done, but it is a buildable lot. And so
Doesn't have to be.
it's one of these situations this board has to deal with.
Couple of things along those lines. When we put the sketch plan application together, we've got everything GPS located. We know GPS is plus or minus. It's accurate, but it's not survey quality accurate, particularly with respect to this lot, which is, even to the layperson, somewhat tight. We do anticipate Lee and Blood as the surveyor of record on this lot. We anticipate Lee to go out and confirm this emergent edge to be able to make an even more accurate rendition of the 250 offset of resource protection and shoreline zone, and at least the portion of priority 3 wetlands in the vicinity of that building site to be located by survey as well. And then we thought also, for the purposes of anything that would happen on the landward side or the field side, that would give us a little bit more comfort, if you will, that what we are permitting out in the woods there is in fact, it's met that standard and then some. That would be our intent to prove that, to make it more comfortable a decision as possible.
Something on my mind is that we may even want to find building corners for that, that's
Yeah,
going
no, we've done it
to,
before.
survey. Yep.
I understand for an open space subdivision like this, it's probably less of a concern to you up in the field. We would still have that road center line staked. We'd still have the approximate lot corners flagged and so forth. But down in this neck of the woods, I indicated to the applicants, the clients, that we probably would like that higher level of detail to be double certain. Okay.
Is the road association going to maintain that driveway along with the rest? I'm assuming it's going to be a homeowners association that's going to maintain a private road.
My guess is no. My guess, at this point, I don't think we've conceived the answer to that question. I'm sort of shooting from the hip. At this point, we may choose otherwise, but my guess at this stage of the game is probably that one little piece of private driveway will be the responsibility of that individual lot owner and not part of the whole road system.
Okay.
To not drag these other owners into the responsibility for just that private section of access for one house.
If I look at this plan, it sort of says that Lot 7's going to command a pretty good price tag.
You're savvy. This isn't your first rodeo. I think that's the momentum for having it on the plan in the first place. Is that, yeah, I think it is, likely it would be what I would think would be the creamy spot to be, if you will, down in the woods, close to the marsh, but not within the shoreline zone, not within the RP zone. And I'll point out that aspect of the plan, by the way. It does include a pathway through the woods, the 6-foot or less meandering pathway that's allowed under your shoreline and resource protection zoning that would go to a floating dock, a temporary or seasonal dock that would be out here that would become part of this application eventually. We would have a DEP permit for that. We think this is the location for it based on what we know in terms of the deep water that's available. The cut through into the bigger piece of the river is right here in front of where that dock would go. And really, it's kayak country, and that's it. It's canoe and kayak country. You won't even, I don't even think you get a motorboat in there.
In your wetland alteration calculation, getting all the way to the house with that driveway? Or you're just going up to the upland area? Right.
Well, what other wetland calculations would
I
there
mean,
be?
I'm just wondering for however the driveway into the garage works and how they get out, it's still going to meet the 25-foot wetland setback?
Oh, you're talking about a buffer. No, you're talking about, I was confused. I
25-foot
thought you were,
setback.
yeah.
Or with, I mean, that house, you've got, that building area for that house is as shown, right? Without getting into
The building that we put on the
wetland
plan was the
setbacks.
one that Eric Peterson gave us, and I'm going to go back to the comment I made previously, which is that thus far this information is GPS located, and we think it might improve and become more roomy even in the next iteration. So we'd like to hold it on the map, on the plan as a viable thing, and in the next iteration of a preliminary plan coming back to the board, prove its comfort even further to the board than it is now. You're asking all the right questions, Judy, but this is sketch plan phase. I may have opened ourselves up to a little extra crossfire here because we've put a plan together that far exceeds what most people do for a sketch plan. I skipped the comic book, the comic strip sketch plan. and
Well,
went
you
right-
kind of have
Don't you
to,
think?
in the case of
Well, that's true.
an
That-
open space subdivision,
Absolutely true. That's the reason
they
why I
will
didn't want
need to
to.
make a determination.
I wanted to come to the board with something that was
Number of lots
more valid to start
is
with.
a valid
Yeah.
request, yeah. So at some point, they will need to make that determination.
Jim? Unlike David, I'm not so quick to say that Lot 7 ought to be part of this, this subdivision. I think it's extremely tight building area. I look at the rest of this plan, and I think you've really done a great job of avoiding hitting any of the wetlands until you get to Lot 7. And I think this would be an extraordinary plan if you axed Lot 7 and went with 8 lots instead of 9. That would be my input here at site plan. And I know it's site plan, but just sketch plan.
Could you get some of your
Just-
other board members to also use the term extraordinary? And
No,
Oh.
nobody listens to me.
I'm teasing.
Nobody, but,
I'll use unique.
I think I would feel far more comfortable if Lot 7 was eliminated and the need for crossing the wetland there were to be eliminated. This is pristine property. It's a important property to our environmental health in our town, and all we can do to protect it. And somebody had said, maybe it was David, that you pick away at wetlands in 4,000, 3,000 square foot increments, and eventually it's all gone. So
I I hear your comment. I would
I'd
tell
like
you,
you to take a hard look at Lot 7.
we will do that. I would tell you.
And remember, we don't care about the money.
No, I understand.
David had mentioned
I
that
understand.
that would command a lot of money. Well, we don't know that.
I understand.
And don't
Doesn't
care.
matter. I understand.
I want to protect this very sensitive and extraordinary piece of land to the best that we can. And I think,
I don't-
other than that, you've
I
done a
don't
great job.
disagree. I would point out one thing to the board. While this was 1986 and under a different series of reviews, you got a house right down here. Here's your emergent edge, okay? Over here, we've got two.
We didn't have our shoreline zone.
Correct. And thankfully you do now, but, so I'll just point that out to the board that we've got houses in the same neighborhood.
Two
much closer.
mistakes. I mean, that,
Oh, I
there's no
bet the
reason,
owners of those
no
homes-
reason to continue that. That's why we have the ordinances we have now.
And the sensitivity to wetland protection has changed since 1986.
If you got rid of lot 7, would you still need a cul-de-sac?
I
on
think
that
your
edge, or
ordinance requires
does
we
it?
have a cul-de-sac, yeah.
Just check.
Which, by the way, use up an awful lot of land.
They do.
Well, and there are,
I mean, in open space
under
subdivisions.
our road standards, and I'll have to look at them, a T-turn is allowed up to a certain number of lots, and if it's going to be a private situation. There are some waiver provisions even under the road standards.
Well, I think we did,
I don't know if it'd be worthwhile taking a look at a T versus cul-de-sac. I don't know.
okay.
I don't know.
Absolutely. We wouldn't want to make a change to a T in vain without talking to some of the other players. Other questions, comments?
A real simple one. Hydrant, fire suppression,
Haven't got that far yet.
haven't, or sprinkler?
I'm assuming we'll bring a hydrant down the road because the water's got to come down the road. That's going to be far less costly than encumbering each of the individual houses with sprinkler systems. In this case, I've been involved in some others where it was far easier to just say we're going to sprinkle the houses, but I think in this case, it's as sensible to just bring the hydrant and place a hydrant down the road. As we get the details of road design and layout, plan and profile and so forth, I would think those utilities would show. So yes, I anticipate a hydrant somewhere along this road to satisfy.
I do have another question. Have you taken a look at the site distances coming out onto Boothby?
Not more than at a cursory glance, but I'm basing a lot of my knowledge with this on a comfort I got from Chris Osterreiter, who's been on Boothby Road enough and has looked at this intersection enough. We'll show actual accurate site distances. There is no better place along this road for it. I think the speed limit there is 25. So we only need 250 feet, and I believe we have that in each direction. It will be something measured and added to future plans.
The other question I've got is where Boothby Road meets Route 9, have you had a chance to talk to a traffic engineer to see what effect this additional traffic from your subdivision will have on that terrible intersection, Boothby Road to Route 9?
We have not
I
contacted a
think you
traffic
should,
engineer
I'd like
yet.
at least a cursory review or cursory conversation about that, because that's a tough intersection up there.
Okay. We'll look at that, for sure. Thanks for that comment.
Board members, anything else?
Same question is going to come up.
The site walk,
Sidewalk?
Sidewalk.
Yeah.
snowshoes?
Not yet.
Snowshoes, anyone? Come on, Richard, where's your sense of, adventure? Where's your sense of adventure? We'll put the snowshoes on.
70 years old, I don't need any more.
Yeah, just teasing.
You may.
Betsy Smith. Is it possible to define dock usage as being non-motorized, because it is accessible at about an hour either side of high tide. And I can tell you that a dock there would have access to the Kennebunk River and out to the ocean. And we are increasingly on Gooch's Creek getting small whalers and overpowered inflatables, and they're really cutting up the bank of that creek. Yeah. So I'm just wondering, I don't know how it works with docks, but if there's a way to say no motorized, period.
That would be something more likely that it would appear in the housing docs, I would think, for the subdivision, where if the.
Right, but is that, I guess the question, is that something that we can require, or we can certainly suggest it? Loud, they'll find a way, probably.
Yeah, you guys lost Jonathan. He used to be the speaker for the kayaks.
We don't have specific standards on that. Maybe we can make that part of the sidewalk.
Can we get down
What do
there?
you mean, to get down there to look at it? You could certainly get
Well,
down there to look at it.
if it's gonna be part of the application.
Yeah, if
I
it's
mean,
on
I know,
approval, we're gonna need to see
DEP doesn't care whether it's a motorized boat or
Well,
not.
I know, but maybe we do.
Yeah.
And
We're gonna need to
They
see
have
the
no-
site if
DEP
you're
has
gonna.
no minimum standards.
I don't think so. I think once you get a dock approved, you're allowed to tie whatever will go there up to the side of it. If you can fit an ocean liner there, I guess you could put it there, but.
But if there's gonna be a dock permit request as part of this application, we're certainly gonna wanna go down
For
and
sure,
see that site.
for sure.
so.
Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. And, I don't know, I haven't spoken with the clients about this. Maybe instead of no motorized boats, maybe they would put a 10-horse limit on it or something, just so it wouldn't be a large enough motor to tear up the bank, as she suggests. But, a small motorboat is not gonna do the damage. It's gonna be a whaler, like she says, with something, bigger motor on it. I don't think my 9 horsepower is gonna do a whole lot to erode the banks there, but I got to leave that one up to my clients as to what they are willing to or not willing to do to limit, if in fact the board feels strongly about it.
Anything else we need to do at this point?
I guess what I'll do, if you can let me know when it's walkable, I will gather the board and
This is going to need to I'll have to do some clearing of some sort if we're going to go all the way down to the edge of the marsh, because
oh, and
there's.
I don't know if they want to walk over. Do you want to go over?
Well, these guys would,
Well,
I get the sense that they'd like to see
If
the
you're
site
gonna do
anyway.
a dock permit, we're gonna wanna see it.
Yeah, if it's
The location.
accompanying the application.
But if you choose not to do the dock permit now, and it be part of some future permit request and not part of the subdivision application, then we wouldn't need to see it now.
I think it would that be an amendment to the subdivision plan, though, that we'd have to come back to the board over?
It
we
could
could-
be, well, I mean, you could put a note on the subdivision plan that a dock permit will be
Yeah.
requested separately as a shoreline damage.
It might be that we want a two-step on this site walk that involves a drive around and coming in across this. This is a well-established path, is it not? It's a railroad bed, so it would be possible, I guess, to park somewhere further down the line and walk down to it, to see this more easily than bombing all the way through the woods out here. I'll look at that,
Whether
I'll
it's
look at
safe
that
to
much
get
more
in
closely.
on the other
I've been on site walks with you folks before. I'll try to be mindful of what our challenges are.
I think somebody in the room could probably answer this question, but I believe there are private landowners in Deer Trees that own portions of the bridle path that goes down to what used to be a bridge.
Over here?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with that. I can't really speak to that.
No,
I don't think so.
I-
There is a piece, maybe it's
I don't think the land trust owns clean through it. They have a way across it, and I don't know if that's, Isabel, if you want to speak to that.
That's easy enough to check on the.
Okay. I mean, I'd love it to be the case that the land trust has either, a right-of-way across it or something, but I think there were two landowners that still,
Lot lines?
Oh, our lot line is on this edge of it, so I know there's no ownership from our side. I don't know what's going on down here, but Leon's got a projection of this, the lot line for at least this lot along the bridle path, and it starts down like this, which indicates that that is not part of this lot, at least right here. I don't know about further down below my plan.
well, it comes off Boothby Road. So you've got a section that passes, I think, at least 3 or 4 landowners before it gets to that open section you're talking about that runs to the bridge, to the approaches to the granite, approaches to the old railroad bridge, which is no longer there.
Right, that's here, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The land trust does own the rest of the land on the other side of Lake Brook.
Over in here. You're talking about this land.
I'm talking about that whole isthmus that
This here?
sticks out as you cross the bridge, and it goes up to Forest Hill.
Forest Hill Lane.
Okay.
And the board would remember that. This is looking across. Forest Hill Lane is on this side of this wetland system. We're basically looking straight across to where that tower was at the end of Forest Hill Lane. So this is the same, in fact, kind of wetland system that we're at the edge of.
Putting my open space hat on, I'd really love to see that bridge restored, but that's neither here nor there. I'm not asking the applicant to do that either.
The applicant can't do that. That's
It's
not
not
their
his
land.
property.
They'd love to, but the applicant can't do that. This is the lot
No,
line.
I know that. I know
David,
it.
you can do it. You're retired, you have
Just be
plenty of time on
just be
your
careful,
hands.
because you need a permit from the planning board to do it.
I know it. And I'm also, what you're going to need is Army Corps, because that's a navigable waterway in terms of what that bridge would
For
look
the
like.
dock, you mean?
No, for the bridge.
For the bridge?
Yeah,
Oh,
the
yeah.
dock too.
Oh, yeah.
The bridge is,
No, we
All
would,
right, all right.
if you were to permit that,
Bring
yeah.
it-
neither
Bring it
here nor
back.
there. Thank you.
Time for dreaming is later.
I'm sorry, I forgot to give you the gavel, Chris.
You did.
Sorry. I will remember next meeting.
It's his first day back. He's got a lot to say. All right. Well, I guess that's.
I guess I'll wait to hear from you. And
Yeah,
we'll
site
schedule
walk
a
for the
site
next
walk.
two, for both of those as quickly as we can get them scheduled as the weather permits, as conditions allow.
All right.
Okay? And
Thank
then
you, Jim.
after that site walk and we get some more input from you, we'll hope to prepare the first of the preliminary plans to come back and with more detail.
Thank
Okay.
you
Thank you.
very much.
Thanks, Jim.
We're just out of practice. We're out of practice reining you in.
Ready?
I'm not sure. Where am I?
For minutes. I read them, I didn't see them.
Let's go back to the minutes. We can't vote on them today
Why not?
because only 2 present people were here.
Oh, oh, that's
There were 3 at the meeting, but one of those people are not at this meeting. Bob is not here to review, to vote on it.
You weren't here.
I was not here at that meeting.
Oh.
I guess you have to wait anyway.
Yep. So we'll table that to the next meeting.
Okay.
I was on vacation. I know. You never know, Jim, how long it's going to take. Okay, other business.
Okay, the only other business is just a reminder that your first meeting in April is public hearing night. I spoke with our attorney because you made some minor changes to the First Amendment that you had a hearing on regarding a butter notice when any map changes, zoning map changes are proposed.
About the mail.
Or contract zone. She felt it was enough of a change to require another public hearing, so.
Okay.
So,
Do it again.
that's fine.
Another public hearing for what?
Amendment to the notification
Oh,
of.
that's right, you weren't here.
Contract zone.
Okay.
To an earlier
Result
notice to
from-
abutters when map amendments or contract zones are
We
proposed.
talked about it before.
Yep.
Yep.
And the second hearing will be on the redefinition / standards regarding kennels.
Kennels.
They modified.
Breeding or grooming.
They modified the draft after your last to put the 50-foot buffer back in, leave it the way it was for all kennels. And to limit these 1 acre ones in the rural zone to 5. 5 adult
Dogs.
female
Yep.
dogs. Yeah. I did have a brief discussion with our animal control officer, because you folks asked. She has not committed yet to whether she's available to come to that meeting. I don't know that, huh?
Judy, are you saying they're going to recommend that we keep the 3 acres?
No, no.
1
'cause-
acre, but 5 dogs.
Yeah. No, because the reason this is being proposed is because she doesn't have 3 acres.
Right, so
She's
it's
proposing the change to allow in the rural district
1 acre.
1 acre
5 adult
for up to
dogs,
5 adult females.
and a 50-foot buffer.
And keeping our 50-foot buffer that's already there.
And for all kennels, not just for breeding? Is that it? I know breeding was that we were going to separate out breeding from the other kinds.
Her wording was breeding. I'm going to have to check that again, because off the top of my head, I can't remember.
Sorry.
I can get you guys a copy of that
Obviously.
hearing. I'll send that earlier. I'll send that to you tomorrow.
Ed Eddie going to be available?
I am not sure on that, and I don't know whether he wants to be for this hearing. I don't know if since his isn't going to make it to
Oh,
June town meeting, I don't know if he was asking because he knows where there's money being put in the budget to start working on a comp plan update generally. He's wondering if we shouldn't just wait and include that in the comp plan update that gets done. I mean, I don't know that there's anything in it that we can't implement. We're already starting to implement some of the
Yep.
information in there, so I don't know that it is going to prevent us from completing any work that needs to be done as a result of that CDAP, but I don't know that, he sort of took a step back and said, well, we need other comp plan amendments that we're probably going to
Right.
hire out and get done, and maybe that can just be part of that, but Right now, on the April 27th, not sure I have any projects pending. I don't know if any of these will make it back on or not. Depends when we do the hearings, if we, the site walks. If we do the site walks early April, probably a couple of these projects you saw tonight will be back on, I assume.
Okay.
Or at least a revisit. I'm guessing at least the sketch plan for the bookstore will be back on.
Yeah. Okay.
I will send out a reminder to you. I'll just send out an email, remind you before the site walk for the bookstore, just so you don't forget.
Can you email our absent members earlier to tell them that there's a site walk
Okay.
rescheduled?
Yep.
Just Bob and Matt, in case they don't go home and watch our tape right away.
You don't think?
Sure, they T-boated already.
Any other board members have any other business?
I'd like to welcome David back from his vacation,
Sojourn.
and I'm glad to see that he hasn't lost any of his ability towards verbosity. Welcome back, David.
Thanks, I accept that friendly insult. It's great to be back.
Yes, it's nice to have him back. All right.
Did you get some good pictures of things we should be doing here that you saw elsewhere that you thought? Did you? Good.
All right. If there's nothing else, motion.
Move, we adjourn.
I second it.
All in favor? Aye. We are adjourned.